This is Roberto Baggio. Surely you didn't need me to tell you that, but this was Roberto Baggio in his short stint as the FIGC technical consultant sometime between 2010 and 2013. Now, in 2010, Italy absolutely flopped in South Africa. The defending champions succumbed to the apparent curse of being the previous tournament's winners and went out in the group stage with 2 points. And hey, at that time, you heard talk of Italian football being in crisis. I mean, they did this against New Zealand. What? So Baggio wrote a 900-page plan to revitalize and reform Italian football. Clearly, he could see the direction that Italian football could be heading in if they didn't change how they operate. His report touched upon everything from a focus on scouting, more advanced technical training for younger players, and even ethical values. His plan was approved, and nothing came of it. Why would that be? Well, about 15 years later, and for the third World Cup qualification cycle in a row, Italy, a national team that has just 1 fewer World Cups than Brazil, with 4 alongside Germany, will be heading to the qualification playoffs. Twice they have failed at this level, and so Italians would be justified in feeling a bit nervous here. Hey, I'm Adrian, by the way. Thank you for joining me, and despite all of this World Cup difficulty that Italy seems to be having, qualification difficulty, they won a European Championship just 4 years ago, but it kind of feels like that was decades ago, like an alternate dimension given their major tournament performances, or lack thereof, since, right? So why is this? Why the Italian national team is having issues right now is what we're focusing on, because there does seem to be some hope for the future, despite the current picture, namely when it comes to World Cup performance and qualification since 2006, being pretty drab. And they had warnings that this would happen. As with anything, it's a bit of a perfect storm. There's obviously incompetence at the management level at FIGC. I won't go too deep into the politics of the FIGC and how many appointments and roles that have power seem to be political rather than based on who is actually a better fit or more qualified for that position. Now, I started by talking about the divine ponytail, Roberto Baggio, and his 900-page plan. What was in it? A total reform of technical training to increase the quality of instructors and coaches, with the aim being that most of them have some sort of professional football background as well as educational skills. He wanted to divide Italy into 100 football districts, and each one would be overseen by 3 federally recognized football coaches so that 50,000 plus matches would be seen and they could identify talent early in order to nurture it properly with these new, more qualified coaches that he wanted to have, as well as to have regular communication between academies and the district coaches. This is something that we saw when we were talking about Norway and their revitalization. On top of this, he wanted to create a computer-based digital platform that would not only provide a catalog of approved drills and testing for coaches, but would also have a library of filmed matches so that you could track the progress of a given talent. As part of this, it would be upheld by a permanent group of researchers who would likely work alongside university interns and researchers in order to continuously innovate methods to ensure that Italian talent was subjected to the most modern, forward-thinking training and technical instruction possible. He also, and this will come as no surprise, wanted to move back toward a focus on talent and the relationship with the ball, as he said, given that Italy had until that point mainly focused on the physical prowess of players, which in that time Baggio said was, quote, detached from the context of the game. He didn't want to leave the physical side out of it completely, but just change the ratio of prioritization more toward talent rather than someone who was physically imposing but less talented. Now, this plan apparently took about a year to develop, and Baggio had 50 collaborators on the project, and just to summarize it, the too long didn't read of it, was that Baggio wanted to focus on the technical and moral development of young players, build a modern scouting system and centralized database, and revitalize and connect youth academy systems to the national program. Wow. I mean, this sounds incredible. So why did it fail? Well, it didn't fail because it didn't go anywhere. According to Baggio, when he presented his plan to the FIGC in December of 2011, he said that it was a wholly disappointing experience, saying, quote, "We waited 5 hours in the waiting room and only had a quarter of an hour to present the project. It was approved, 10 million euros was allocated, but I didn't receive the funds, and everything remained on paper." The FIGC announced on the day of his presentation that it had been approved, his presentation that is, although any and all matters to do with scouting would not be included in the project because anything to do with scouting fell under the responsibilities of Arrigo Sacchi and his department in the FIGC. Just 1 year and a month later, in January of 2013, Baggio resigned from his position, saying, quote, "I wasn't allowed to work. My 900-page program remained a dead letter. I don't like occupying positions, but rather getting things done." And of course, despite allocating the 10 million euros to the plan, the FIGC didn't go ahead with his plan without him. And so when you look at things now, you've seen a lot of the aspects that Baggio was trying to get ahead of coming to, well, ahead. The lack of top young talent, as well as coaching choices that fail to really blow anybody away or fail to succeed at the national team level for the most part. Now, let's look at youth quickly, as it has been talked about beyond belief when it comes to, Italian clubs not putting enough focus on their youth academies over the past 20 years or so, with only a recent focus being put on developing top talent for the first team in the last decade or so. You have the Juve Next Gen team, you have AC Milan with a great crop of talent coming through. If you use the UEFA Youth League as a barometer, which isn't a perfect measurement, of course, then you'll see that since its inception in the 2013-14 season, an Italian team didn't make the final until 10 years later, during the 23-24 season, of which AC Milan's youth side lost 3-0 to Olympiacos in the final. Okay, but what about the combined forces of the club teams? How is Italy done at the international youth levels? The U17 side, which is one of the age groups that has a FIFA World Cup, U17 World Cup, has actually failed to qualify for the tournament more so than they have actually qualified since the Under-17 tournament began back in 1993. They have qualified 6 times and failed 10 times. As of the time of recording this, they are still alive in the tournament that is ongoing in Morocco, so watch out to see if they can make it past the quarterfinals, which is the furthest they have made it. They also have fared pretty well at the European Championships. Now in 2018, they were runners-up. In 2019, they were runners-up. They got grouped in 2023, but they won it in 2024 and made the semifinals in 25. So this age group for Italy has actually done fairly well. It seems like there's a pretty decent crop of young players coming through at the moment. The U21 team actually shares the record for the most U21 European Championships alongside Spain. They have 5 apiece. That on the face of it sounds great, right? I mean, joint record holders is not bad at all. But then you see that they won all 5 in a 12-year span. Domination, winning in 92, 94, 96, 2000, and 2004, but nothing since then. In fact, they haven't made it past the quarterfinals since 2019, twice getting knocked out in the group stage since then, one instance being when they actually hosted the tournament. At the U20 level, the level that competes in another FIFA World Cup, they failed to qualify for the tournament for 3 tournaments in a row from 2011 to 2015, but since then have fared pretty well. 3rd place in 2017, then 4th, then runners-up in 2023, but a reversion to a round of 16 exit in 2025. Now, the success or failures, I guess, of the youth side don't guarantee that your senior side is going to have success or failure in the future, but it does give you a decent reading of the overall health of the national team program and a general glimpse of what's to come, right? And one of the things that Baggio pointed to as an issue for Italy was the level of coaching. Coaching is a divisive one because if you look at the club level, you can point to examples of Italian teams doing pretty damn well. Atalanta winning the Europa League, Roma winning the Conference League, Inter making 2 finals in 3 seasons. They lost them, but still, you can look to Italian coaches abroad with Maresca winning the Conference League and Italiano coaching to 2 Conference League finals, right? Gasperini is an example of an Italian coach succeeding at this level. Inzaghi did wonderful things with Inter, but fell short. Roma, they won while coached by Jose Mourinho. And getting back to talent and profiles of players, there's something that is distinctly lacking in Italian talent. Solid wingers and dynamic strikers that are at a world-beating level, that are considered in the upper echelon, top of the class for their position. Some coaches in Italy have lamented that Italy has been mostly focusing on developing players in 2 positions, defenders and central midfielders, namely defenders who are good at playing the ball, whether they be center backs or fullbacks/wing backs, as well as central midfielders who can provide goals to the attack. But when it comes to wingers who can dribble past opponents, as well as well-rounded dynamic strikers that aren't target men, again, we're talking at the upper echelon of their position, not guys who are just solid, Italy hasn't been doing that for a while. You can point to defenders and midfielders who have reached that level pretty regularly in the last decade or so, but wingers and strikers, Retegui, one of their forwards that is very dynamic, well, he was born and raised in Argentina, living there until he was 24. It feels like coaches in Italy have coached the flair out of many of the players, that any kind of risk, whether it be a creative through ball or attempting to dribble past opponents, going outside of the system, would be reprimanded too often in order to cultivate an environment for players to continue to grow creatively. And when that happens, you stunt the development of a skill set that can unlock defenses and be game-changing. The ability to beat defenders one-on-one to give your team a numerical advantage of some sort. So when you look at the teams that succeed at the club level, whether with an Italian coach or not, they often recruit from abroad for those wide positions and forward positions, and the Italian players that they do have in those areas are typically 25 plus. There's not a lot of trust in younger players. If you look at their recent success, guys like Chiesa, Spinazzola, and Insigne were able to beat their man in wide areas and provide value to the attack while the team maintained their airtight defense. But looking at the current squad, there isn't much to work with. Then there's the national program, where Italy has a very insular approach to their coaching. When you look at Italy's history, only one foreigner has coached them, Helenio Herrera, and that was just for 4 matches. And look, I get it. For a given country's national team, it's a point of pride to also have a coach from that same country. I totally get why people would argue in favor of that. It makes sense to me. So again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with ensuring that your coaches are Italian, so long as the options that you have are good options. Otherwise, this reluctance to look abroad, to allow yourself to be influenced by different ideas in order to broaden your horizons, it kind of encapsulates what exactly is wrong with the Italian football program as a whole right now. Unwilling to evolve, unwilling to listen to new ideas, even from one of their own, such as Baggio, and a failure to prioritize what Baggio said as the relationship with the ball. Placing a focus on physical adeptness at the expense of the technical, more skillful players on the wing and in the forward positions. That, of course, falls back once again to a focus on coaching, which Baggio wanted, and a consistent development of tactics, new, refined ways of getting the best out of players, regular communication between the federation and the academies, and ensuring that the right, most qualified people were leading the coaching of the next generation. It all trickles down from the top. Because again, the next generation looks quite promising, but without the right people leading them and without the right coaches at the youth levels being able to ensure that it's not a one-off generation and rather a sustained stream of talent, then it will all be for naught. So we'll see what happens in March, if they are able to make it through the playoffs, and regardless of the result, if Italy will begin to make change a priority within their program, or stay the course and see what happens. Anyway, that's my opinion as an outsider. I found Baggio's rejected plan crazy, like a complete denial of innovation at all levels, which is unreal. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon. We'll talk World Cup qualifying, all right? Take care.